In this video, I share with you why I canceled my order for the MK4 and got this Uniformation GK2 instead. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Boulder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of August of 2023, we have this printed and painted and flocked ruins from the Battlefield Kickstarter. We have 2 pledges for the Battlefield's Kickstarter that's going on right now. We have 2 pledges for the upcoming Timescape Kickstarter. We have a Gweik 10-watt laser. We have 2 full sets of Dynamod STL files. Since doing this review video, a bunch of new files have been added and instructions are provided to create hue forged floor tiles so that you can get color tiles that are true no paint option. He also did create doors that open. Use the link in the video description to go to Dynamod to see the full range that is currently available. And then finally, we have $100 going towards a crowdfunding campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. Use the link below to go to my Patreon page to see what all of the gratitude gifts are and how you can get in on that by just supporting me with just $1. This video is broken up into 2 sections. The first is my decision-making process for why I canceled my pre-order for the Prusa MK4. And then the second section is to talk about the Uniformation GK2 printer and all of the prints that I created and what I love about this machine. So if you want to skip the first part, go ahead and use the timestamp below to fast forward to the review for this printer. But before we get into either of those topics, I do want to say a quick shout out to SUNLU. They did send me some resin to review, and this is the new red wax resin, which is specifically made for 8K and above printers. And I also asked them to go ahead and send me their regular gray standard resin, and so what you see printed out here is from SUNLU. I'll get into what I think about this resin later on when I do talk about the quality of the prints that I was able to get from GK2, but I did want to thank SUNLU for sending me their resin. So I've mentioned in a couple of videos that my favorite printer brand is actually Prusa, and at one point I did own 3 Prusa machines, 2 of the MK3S's and 1 Prusa Mini, and I've been really happy with those machines. They've lasted this entire time. I think on my first Prusa printer, the only thing I've had to replace was the cable that went to the heated bed, and pretty much everything else has been running fine. I did go ahead with all of my Prusa machines, replace the bed with the textured plate. These are just cheap secondhand knockoffs on Amazon, and that has improved the adhesion to the bed with that initial layer, and I haven't had any problems with that since. But again, other than that, my Prusa machines have been running fantastic and I've been happy with them. So when they did announce the MK4, I was pretty excited about that. I didn't jump in right away, but I did pre-order the MK4 and it was scheduled to deliver at the end of June, but thankfully it was delayed because that gave me time to really think about it, and I decided at the beginning of this month of August to go ahead and cancel my order. And here's the reason why I canceled. After having reviewed the AnyCubic M5 and also keeping up with Bambu Labs P1P and now their new machine P1S, I just couldn't justify the $1,200 cost for the MK4 pre-built. Now, I build all of my machines, so typically I get the kits, but I want to compare apples to apples because the AnyCubic M5 as well as the Bambu Labs comes pretty much pre-assembled as well. So to compare apples to apples, the $1,200 cost for the MK4 is just super high. I would even say if the pre-built option was $800, which is the cost of the DIY kit, the one that you have to assemble, and that took me about 10 hours to assemble myself, I still would prefer to grab the AnyCubic or the Bambu Labs over that machine because I feel like Prusa has fallen behind these other companies and sort of have relied on their reputation And granted, their reputation is pretty good because they are open source and the machines just run reliably for a really long time. And the customer service is really good as well. But in terms of the advancements that have been made with these other machines, for example, where really they are true plug and play, where you don't really have to do any adjustment or any kind of bed leveling, that both the Bamboo Labs as well as the AnyCubic does all of that for you, and the convenience of being able to do it connected to your Wi-Fi as well as having an app on your phone. All of those features make it so that they are better machines now than the Prusas. And I know that Prusa promises that the speed of their machines will go up once the firmware is finalized, but I do feel like they shipped an incomplete machine. And again, it just feels like they've fallen behind the advancements of these other innovative 3D printing companies. And it definitely isn't worth $1,200. For that $1,200, I would definitely pick the Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon over the MK4. By far, hands down, I would choose that machine. And in fact, at this point, I am choosing the cheaper versions of the P1P or the P1S, which are $600 and $700 respectively, or the AnyCubic M5, which is $800 retail, but I've seen it on sale even today on Amazon for as low as $560. So those are definitely better machines. You can buy two of those for the price of the MK4 at $1,200. And they are faster machines and they have better user interface. The touchscreen actually works as a touchscreen on the AnyCubic. All of those things combined to make me realize that my loyalty to the brand, which again, a lot of it is deserved, it just faded away. These other machines, in terms of plug and play and ease of use and UI interface, just pulled so far ahead of the MK4 that I just couldn't justify spending that money on the MK4. So instead, I went ahead and bought this machine. So I'm going to transition now into talking about how I decided to take the money I was going to spend on a FDM printer and applied it to buying a top tier resin printer. So on my channel, I did review two smaller resin printers, a first gen Chinese clone, the Shadow 5.5S, as well as the longer 4K mono. And both of those printers were fine. I did print a good number of miniatures from that. I created a whole Seraphon army from One Page Rules. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check it out here. But I definitely preferred FDM printing over resin printing and would wait until I had enough STLs that I wanted to print before I would pour resin into the vat and go through the rigmarole of processing, curing, washing everything. I just felt like it was a big mess. And I finally realized the reason why I didn't like resin printing was because that whole process wasn't worth the few miniatures that I could fit on those small plates. So both the 5.5S as well as the longer has a build plate, maybe 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches. So I could only fit at most 6 or 7 miniatures onto that build plate. So it was a lot of work waiting for that to actually print, and then, invariably I would have to reprint it because the supports weren't sticking very well and it would be a failed print, and washing all that resin off, and then, taking it to the alcohol, and eventually I switched over to water washables, but that was still a pain in terms of processing. So I realized that all of that effort and work and needing to do that cleanup work after only every 6 miniatures or so, I just felt like it wasn't worth it. Not realizing that if I just bought a machine with a bigger build plate, I could actually have more return on investment on that time investment because the build plate is a lot larger. So instead of maybe only 6 or 7 miniatures printing at a time, on a machine with a 10-inch build plate like this one, as well as all the other larger build plate resin printers that you can get now, the amount of work and effort of cleaning, you can do that more efficiently because I can print out 4 times the number of those miniatures on these larger build plates, but the cleaning and washing and all that kinds of stuff becomes more efficient because I'm cleaning 4 batches worth of miniatures all at once. So I'm finding since I've gotten this machine a couple of weeks ago, I've been printing a ton, as you can see here, and I'm actually enjoying it a lot. So if you have tried resin printing and just found the whole process not worth it, maybe this will help you think, oh, the reason why it's not worth it is because your build plate is so small, it's not a high return on investment in terms of how much cleaning you have to do. But with a larger build plate like this, I'm finding it super fun, and it has reignited my passion to print out a bunch of miniatures. And again, I'm sticking with my FDM printers for the terrain, and I'm using the resin printer exclusively for minis, for busts, for things that require a lot of detail. So why did I end up choosing the Uniformation GK2 over some of the other options out there, especially since this is an expensive machine. It's $900. And with that amount, I could have saved maybe $200, $300 to buy the AnyCubic or the Elegoo 10-inch screens. And in fact, I think one of them is now up to 12K, which I don't really care about because anything after 4K, the human eye can't really discern that well. So I don't really care about the numbers in terms of resolution. So I was really considering, especially during Amazon days, of picking up the AnyCubic because I had heard good things about it. And I actually prefer the build plate having 4 screws attached to the arm rather than on the Elegoo you have that ball joint, and I've heard complaints about that getting out of whack in terms of needing to level that more often. So I was leaning towards the AnyCubic machines, but at the end of the day, I pulled the trigger instead on the Uniformation, and I'm super glad that I did, even though this is a pretty pricey machine. So the features that I want to tell you about that made me decide this, I want to give a quick shout out to both Fohammer. Ross from Fohammer he's watching his video is the reason why I ended up picking this up, as well as Vogman. Those are the 2 YouTubers that I follow in terms of their reviews about resin printing in particular. And both of them just gave high praises to this machine. And sure enough, the small conveniences that come with this machine make this worth it over the AnyCubic or over the Elegoo printers. And the key thing, I would say the number one reason why I got this is because it has an internal heater. So your ambient heat that is in your basement or your garage or wherever you have it, it really plays a huge factor in terms of the amount of time, exposure time that you need on your resin. And so the fact that this has an internal heater and will consistently heat your resin up to the required 30 or 35 degrees that it needs to stay constantly at that level, Celsius, really is the reason why I got this machine. Because I don't have it enclosed where I can throw a heater in and have consistent heat in there. The fact that it comes with a built-in heater is a huge plus, and I don't know why more machines don't have that feature. So that's the number one reason why I got it. Another reason why is because of ease of use. Both the build plate as well as the resin vat is quick release. There are no thumb screws. There is no screw that you have to take off. You know, there's been a couple of prints that I've ruined because I've forgotten to tighten on my other printers the print bed back onto the arm. Here, you don't have a chance of doing that. You have to flip this quick release down in order to secure the build plate onto the arm. And I just love the convenience of being able to pull out the vat in and out rather than using the thumb screws that usually one of them invariably drops into the vat anyway. So those are the little conveniences that really I appreciate a ton about this machine. Also, I did end up purchasing a Wham Bam plate for this machine, and if you do that, you do have to print out a little spacer to increase the spacer so that the default 0 state isn't too far down. But I found that I don't really need the Wham Bam plate. The prints are coming off relatively easily with a scraper, and there's only been one occasion where I've actually pulled the plate off and flexed it in order to get a piece off. Whereas with my smaller machines, I really needed that wham bam plate, that flex plate to take things off. Here, I don't know why, if it's because it's larger, I've had no issues getting prints off of the build plate. Another huge thing about this machine is that it has the USB port in the front. I have no idea why the other manufacturers stick it on the side. Some even put it in the back of their machines, which I think is the dumbest thing possible. But the fact that it's in the front, I really like also the touchscreen here and the UI. Very intuitive, very easy to go through. And one of the things that Ross said is that the machine actually can download your files off of that USB stick and put it into the internal memory. That way you don't have failures due to your USB stick going bad in the middle of a print. One feature that I really quickly wanted to share with you, which is totally awesome and is a game changer, is that when you have a misprint, oftentimes there'll be something on your FEP, and it's a total pain because typically I would have to use this to scrape it out, and sometimes the bits would fall in there and I'd have to pour the whole thing out again in order to get that off. But there's a really good alternative to this, and that is right here, this option where you do vat cleaning. So if you press on that, you'll get this image, and you can pick the entire build plate or just the center part, which is handy because most people are mostly just printing in the center. But I'm going to go ahead and select the larger part, although you can pick if you want to create your own. But I'll go ahead and do the whole vat, and you can pick how much time you have: 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or 30 seconds. 10 seconds is plenty of time. And then to use this, is what you want to do is just grab one of your support pieces that you have discarded, and you stick it here, and make sure you get it down in there like this at the very bottom so that it's touching. And then go ahead and hit the play button, and now it's exposing it for 10 seconds. The exposure has ended. And look at how awesome this is. Go ahead and just pick this up. So anything that was stuck on your FEP is now off. I'm going to have to drop the camera to make sure this doesn't drip everywhere. And then you can just throw this away after you expose it. And let's go ahead and take some close-ups at these prints that I've made. Again, all of these red ones is from the new Red Wax SUNLU Resin, which I've pretty much used up. And the gray ones is the SUNLU Standard Gray. I was curious about this resin because it is cheaper than most of the other resins that are on Amazon. So I was a little bit worried, but so far I've been pretty happy with the results. And so I think this might be my new go-to resin rather than using the Elegoo resins that I've done so in the past. I did order up the ABS-like, and I'm going to be printing out my miniatures with that just so that they'll have a little bit more resiliency in case I drop them. But let's go ahead and take a look, especially with these two that I printed out, both of these dragons heads. These are from Archvillain Games, and both models I feel like are really detailed, but you tell me in the comments below, which one of these do you think has the better detail in it as you're looking at these two models side by side? And if you say to me that you can't really tell the difference between the two, well, congratulations, because I can't tell the difference either. I was expecting the red wax to have significantly more detail than the regular resin, especially since the red wax is more viscous or is thicker. It's more like syrup, whereas one of the things about the standard resin from SUNLU, it's very watery. But I don't see the standard gray losing out with the details more so than the red wax version of it. So SUNLU might be upset that I'm saying that, but it's really hard for me to be able to tell the difference between the two regarding the detail. And maybe it's because I sometimes overcook my prints a little bit more than what is optimal, and that's because I prefer my supports to stay on rather than, and I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of detail in order to cook them, have the exposure time be a little bit higher. Other people might be able to pull more detail from their prints than I do, but these prints, honestly, both of them look fantastic to me. Now, I will say that the red wax did require a little bit more exposure time. So with the standard gray, I was doing 1.65 seconds per layer. And then with the red wax, I bumped that up to 1.75 per layer. And again, I did do the cones of calibration and some other tests to try to optimize it. But overall, it's really hard for me to be able to tell. And interestingly enough, I thought that the red wax would be more brittle because for high detail prints, typically the resin is more brittle, and so you don't want to handle them as much. They're sort of display pieces. But I'm finding this red wax to be actually a little bit more flexible than the standard gray. So that's a little interesting. So the reason why I might pick the red wax is just because it's a little bit more flexible and therefore a little bit more resilient than the more brittle standard gray. So take that for what it's worth. Both are pretty good resins. I'm sort of sold on SUNLU as a brand, especially since it's cheaper. So I'm going to make that my standard resin moving forward. I'm giving up on my Elegoo resin. And then if you look at this awesome Battle Sister Superior right here, I still have a couple of pieces left that I need to print, but she is amazing. This STL is amazing. It's by MeshBrain Lab on My Mini Factory. I purchased it. It was $12. And just look at all the detail, both with the gray base as well as the figure itself. There's just a massive amount of detail there. I'm super happy with the print. And with most of these prints, I did not turn on anti-aliasing, so you can see some of the print lines if you look super close. But I'm very, very happy with the level of prints that I'm getting from this machine. If you look at this other War Sister bust here, printed again in gray, I can't complain at all at the level of detail that's found even in the standard gray. Again, it's a little bit brittle, so you have to be super careful. I would definitely not use this for your regular miniatures that you're playing on the tabletop and handling a lot, but tons of detail that I'm finding even with the standard gray. And that War Sister is from Bite the Bullet and cost me $5. Now, all of these Battletech models that you see before you, I'm experimenting with upscaling the Battletech miniatures. I'm going to create a future video as I'm getting more and more into Battletech, and some of these prints that I pulled off of My Mini Factory, they are all free. Matt Mason has created these files. Kudos to him for making these available for free online. And as you can see, I've scaled them up 150% and then 200% original size just to see what larger size I want to play the game at. But here it's handy to look at flat surfaces because you can actually see the layer lines. And again, most of these models I did not have anti-aliasing on. And that's mostly because I just forgot. It defaults in Lychee to being off. You have to turn it on every time you go to slice your models. So I just forgot. But like super hard to tell. And I'm printing everything at 0.03 millimeters. So that's why I'm getting a massive amount of detail on all of these prints, is because of that layer is so small. So I am super happy with this machine, super happy with the resin. This is what gets me excited to actually get more into resin printing. I'm looking forward to printing out a lot of miniatures, not only for Battletech, but also Kraken Studios is coming out with an apocalyptic game which prints out all of their miniatures. I'm excited to do that on this machine in the future. As well as the Armada files from Mantic Games, as they have made that available online, created sort of a subscription service to be able to receive those STL files. So I have a lot of plans in printing out some of my own miniatures. That might be to the detriment of my pile of shame, as that is only going to grow more and more. But this machine, again, I'm not sponsored to give a review, but I do think this machine is excellent top of the line. If you do have the money, go ahead and purchase one of these. Although, to be honest, you're not going to lose at all if you do get the cheaper AnyCubic or the Elegoo versions of their 10-inch machines. They also produce awesome prints too. And then finally, just wanted to make a quick comment. I did buy the cure station here. Pretty expensive, $150 normally. I bought it on sale for $125. I sort of regret that decision. I wish I would have used that money to buy a clean and cure station instead from AnyCubic or Elegoo, primarily because there are opaque plastic covers over the lights on this machine, and that sort of weakens the UV light. So typically I will shine something for maybe about 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops, but here I actually have to have it in the machine for 10 minutes to totally cure one of my prints. So I would not get this UV curing station at all. Use it to buy something else. Hit the like button if you like this video, and make comments below if you also were considering getting the MK4 but decided against it after hearing some of the news about not all the features being available right now. Also hit the subscribe button because, again, I am going to give a video about my decision on which scale I'm going to be using to play Battletech. Happy printing, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.